Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again. This is another Film Fanatic show. Yet another video for the crazy horror pack that I've been getting into, and I got two more movies on this whole package to watch. What a what an awesome kind of movie journey this has been. I've been discovering a whole bunch of movies that I've never seen before, including today's show, which I'm really excited to get to. Super awesome. I mean, on one hand, the quality isn't really that great, but it's second rate, third rate DVD quality, and it's a little bit rough around the edges. There's some movies that came out pretty good, that are pretty good, at least the transfers. But again, this was so cheap. It's got 15 movies on it, and a lot of these movies I've never seen. There's a lot of really old school, like Italian horror exploitation movies. There's a lot of vampire movies on here from like the 60s, and there's movies from the 70s and also the 80s. But most of the movies on here are from the 60s, and super cool, super awesome, and just a great kind of discovery of all of these weird, obscure movies. And I've been posting, the reviews for the movies that I've been covering that are included in this package. And I've been really psyched. There's been a few movies that have been getting a few reviews and posts that have been getting lots of hits, and it's the traffic has been pretty high. And again, I'm always surprised because most of these movies are like super obscure, and I'm like, wow, there's other people out there that are into this crap too, and it's super cool. The and a few folks too have been jumping on board the Film Fanatic YouTube page, and they've been subscribing, so that's really great. The and I've had some cool correspondence with a few folks, so keep the comments coming. It's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about sharing movies and talking about the passion that we have for all of these films. Not I'm not just a collector for collector's sake. I really truly love these movies, and I watch all of the movies that I buy. And most of the reviews that I do, really all of the reviews I do on this channel, are all movies from my collection. So I really, that's where my passion lies at the end of the day. So today's show is on a movie that I was literally blown away by how fantastic it was. I'd never seen it before, never heard of it before. It stars Karen Black, who is one of my favorite. I guess you could call her like a scream queen, but she made a series of these movies, of horror movies in the 70s and 80s, and she has always been one of my favorite actresses. I believe she's still around. She was in one of the. Actually, no, I take it back. She actually passed away in 2013. I did not realize that. She is one of my favorite actresses. I have always loved her. Her career as an actress was kind of extraordinary. A serious actress, like someone who had just unbelievable chops as an actress and really versatile. She could do melodramas, horror movies especially, and she could, do TV movies, but bring that unique magic to each role that only, she could bring. One of my favorite actresses. And I kind of discovered her through her roles in horror movies. So that's how, that whole thing kind of came about for me. Some of the movies that she was in, Five Easy Pieces in 1970, starring Jack Nicholson. Fantastic movie. I haven't seen that in years. I need to see that. My favorite thing that she's ever done is the Trilogy of Terror, where she plays three different characters. That came out in '75, and it's like a horror trilogy. And particularly the episode with the Zuni fetish doll, the last one, which is kind of a precursor by Jesus so many years to the Child's Play franchise, where there's this murderous doll, this completely deranged psychopathic doll that goes on this killing spree. An amazing movie, super creepy, super dark. The ending is I think one of the best endings in horror history. I love that movie. Burnt Offerings in '76, another fantastic movie, kind of like a ghost story, haunted house. Airport 1975, or Airport 1975, which came out in '74. She kind of got her career almost rebooted again when she starred in House of a Thousand Corpses in 2003, the Rob Zombie movie, which is an awesome movie. The Great Gatsby she was in 1974. Easy Rider, iconic, amazing movie in '69. I mean, the roles and the films that she was in, it's just incredible. She was in Invaders from Mars, 1986, Tim Burton classic. Family Plot, '76. Nashville in '76. The Day of the Locust in '75. Capricorn 1, '77. Just amazing. An amazing career. And, also an amazing legacy. This film also stars Christopher Plummer. This film is it's called The Pyx, and it's a 1973 horror movie. It's a Canadian movie. And this movie is so awesome on so many levels. Christopher Plummer is another just iconic actor. He was just in more recently in the Knives Out film, which is a really great kind of modern, Agatha Christie film. He's really fantastic, and he's still around. He's still going. He's up there in age, but still amazing. Just an iconic actor in so many roles. And this movie is called The Pyx, and it came out in 1973. It's a Canadian horror movie, and I had never seen it before. The quality of the movie on this DVD is actually really terrible, but the movie, it was funny. I started watching it a few nights ago, and I started watching it a little bit too late. So I was like, well, I'm going to stop it and pause it here. I'm going to watch it the next night or the next day, refreshed and not fatigued or tired, because I was like, this is. I got about, I don't know, half hour or so into the film, and I was like, this movie is awesome. Like, I really want to be, really into this, and be present. So I decided to do that. One funny thing I noticed, one weird habit that I have amongst many, is that if I watch a movie, especially if it's maybe a little bit of a longer film. This film is not that long, but it's an hour and 45 minutes. But I notice one little habit that I have a lot of the times. If I'm watching a movie and I'm really, really into it, and I'm digging it, and I'm lost into it, I'll find myself sometimes pausing the movie every now and then, and just kind of like sitting there and letting the film and letting what I've experienced, especially if it's around a scene that is really heightened or really intense or just really intriguing. I'll like sometimes sit, pause the film, and just let it kind of resonate with me for a few minutes, because I'm like, wow, like that was really intense or really riveting or just really interesting. So I'll sometimes just sit with the film for a minute and just like think about it. It's a funny thing, and I do that. I notice I do that if I'm into a film that I'm really into, and I did do that. I did that couple times with The Pyx, because there were some things about this film that I just completely loved. It's definitely a horror film, and it definitely has like this occult vibe to it. It's pure '70s cinema too, which is so awesome. It's really gritty. It's really raw, which I love. And the whole film is centered on this woman who is played by Karen Black. And I don't want to give away plot reveals for this film, because it's such a great kind of murder mystery at its core. but it's essentially about this woman who is found dead, and the starting point for the film is basically the police officers arriving at the crime scene where they find this woman dead, and there were like some kind of supposed witnesses to what had happened, and so like the whole opening of the film is basically these police officers on the scene, and then just kind of going through the motions and trying to pick up clues as to what's going on, and the playing out and thinking about all kinds of scenarios. And the head detective and police officer for this investigation is played by Christopher Plummer, and this came out in '73, so he's like super young in this movie, and I've never seen a movie with him from his early part of the career. So he's really awesome in it, and it's so interesting because it's kind of shot and kind of done in a real time kind of scenario. There's a lot of these slow little developments in the story, and it's interesting because the first half of most of the movie, really until like the last act or so, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's a horror film. It feels more like a really good crime detective thriller. But then it does open up, and definitely it becomes a horror film towards the end, and especially the ending. And it's very cool. It's really it's just a really great thriller, but it's definitely a horror film. And it's essentially about this woman who these police, this woman gets murdered. They find her body. There's no indication as to really what happened. There's witnesses of where she might have been thrown out of this window, or maybe had killed herself. And the whole story is about them trying to investigating what the scenarios. And the interesting narrative of the story is that it's all told from at least, and Karen Black plays this woman who is found dead. The interesting narrative of the story is it's all told in kind of flashbacks in her life, and you find out things that she was a prostitute and that she was a heroin junkie, and it goes into her whole life. It goes into her addiction. It also has this really amazing scene of where one of her kind of close friends is also a junkie, but is a little bit far worse, in a far worse situation, and she's in this recovery home. And there's this whole scene where she goes to see her, and really, I mean, real testimony to the incredible acting ability that Karen Black had. Really great. And again, Christopher Plummer is awesome in this. It's great to see him so young, and he's like, I don't know, it's just great. There's some really great action scenes in this film. Actually, there's some really great kind of fight scenes, and it does get gory. It does get there's one scene in particular that is pretty intense, where there's this other crime scene that ends up happening, and it's pretty brutal. And again, classic '70s. The '70s is my favorite decade for horror films and films in general, and it just has that grit to it that is unlike any other decade. And the narrative of the story is so interesting because it's told from her perspective, Karen Black's perspective, but before the fact of her demise. And you see how what her life is, you see where she goes, and you see where she ends up. What was the inevitable cause to her death, and that when they go into those areas, that's when the film evolves definitely into kind of the occult, supernatural kind of a thing. It definitely becomes a horror film at that point, and the ending for this film is super awesome, and I love that at the core of the film it's a thriller, and it's very suspenseful. It's a real great crime kind of caper, really great detective story, but yet it is, you know, a pure, you know, horror gem. And it's interesting too because it's a Canadian movie, which I didn't realize. It's all Canadian actors. It's a Canadian production, And Canada during the 70s was, 70s and 80s was, just an amazing time. You have all there were so many great Canadian like horror films coming out during that time, the late 70s to the 80s, and throughout the 70s and throughout the 80s. You had so many great classic slasher films, exploitation movies, really great. And I happen to own quite a few of those films, but this is just another example of all of the great work that was coming out of Canada. This film was directed by Harvey Hart. He was a Canadian television and film director. He also was a producer. He worked on quite a few movies. He worked on The Pyx in '73, this film here. He did a Columbo movie, Forgotten Lady, in '75. A Deadly State of Mind, also in '75. Shoot in 1976. Now You See Him in 1976 also. Highly prolific. The Sweet Ride in 1968. Bus Riley's Back in Town '65. But again, I was kind of blown away by this movie, and I really, really need to get this on Blu-ray. It's such a great horror film, and I'm a big fan of the whole Canadian film explosion, the whole horror exploitation film explosion that happened in the decade of the '70s and the '80s. My Bloody Valentine probably being the biggest and the most popular, one of the greatest slasher movies of all time. But this movie was awesome. I never heard of it before. Super obscure, and so again, when I read off the movies that Karen Black has been in, you talk about a really diverse track record of films, pretty extraordinary. So I can't recommend this movie enough. The Pyx, just just an awesome, awesome movie from 1973. Please check it out. And this is Jason Dean, and I will see you next time. Peace.